Hey guys, Rich Lopez with the Droptine Traditions podcast. I'm not going to give you what episode because I'm banking recordings this week to gear up for hunting season. So, at any rate, my guest this evening is Mr. Eric Lafollette. Did I say that correctly, or is it Lafollette?
Um, Lafollette, close enough.
Lafollette. Okay. Um, you're from Iowa, correct?
Yeah, I live in Iowa now, so
Hmm.
yes, but I'm originally from Michigan.
Okay. Well, before we get into it, let me just acknowledge our supporters. I got Traps Feather Rests, Daryl Damron, Traditional Bowhunter Magazine, Sauk Trail Archery, StickbowSupplies.com, WhiskeyCityTradGear.com or WC Trad, Jessie Savage Blacksmith.com, TraditionalJunk.com, St. Joe River Bow Company, TheEthicalPredator.com, and StickbowHuntsMX.com. So, Eric, you said you're originally from Michigan. You live in Iowa now. How did you get into archery or bow hunting?
Um, Gosh, I've been shooting a bow for 50 years, probably.
Mhm.
Um, and probably at 20 years old, I went traditional. So I'm
Okay.
60 now. So I've been probably 40 years doing it. I kind of got into it on my own. I really I didn't have there was no father around in when I grew up. Um, I remember a hunter safety class at a very young age, and I saw a guy in the hunter safety video. They were showing like how to field dress the deer.
Hmm.
The old guy popped up out of a brush pile with a recurve and shot a buck that was running through the air. Just amazing, and that just stuck with me. I think that was my first interest in wanting to shoot a bow and learn about that.
Now, how about the hunting aspect of it? Was that self-taught as well?
Yeah, that was pretty much self-taught, and it was pretty painful.
Yeah. Well, I remember that because I grew up in a single family household. So
Yeah.
it's me, my mother, my grandmother, my sisters, and I saw Fred Bear TV. So I told my mom that's what I want to do. So, like all good mothers, she went all in and took me to all the shows and took me my safety classes and all that. And
Yeah, my grandmother did a lot of that. She's the first one that took me, fishing and doing stuff like that, and big influence.
That's great. That's great. Now you've been traditional for 40 years now.
Yeah.
So obviously a compound prior to that.
Well, I started with a recurve, but then when compounds were all the craze, I went that route. But I probably only did that through a few my high school years,
Hmm.
and then I did buy one. I don't know, it's been 12 years ago probably. I had shoulder trouble, and so I was going to hunt with that. I had a big lease in Ohio that year. I was excited about, and I was not shooting my recurve well, and that just didn't go well for me with the compound. And I ended up screwing up on a big one at 12 yards that I know if I'd had my recurve in my hand, I could have shot him,
Right.
because he didn't stop. He was coming through, and
He's
I
just
tried to,
moving.
yeah, with the recurve at 10, 12 yards, I could have shot him.
Yeah.
But with the
Yeah.
compound, it didn't go so well with the compound.
Yeah. I did the compound back in, like you said, when the craze was in, the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. And I missed more deer than I shot with that. And then when I went back to traditional, oh, it was a game changer. It was just pure instinct.
And actually, right after that trip, I immediately, I got home and got the recurve back out and started playing with that. And I was just like, you know what? This is just what I'm gonna. I didn't even like sitting in the woods with the compound. Really, it didn't feel right.
Right.
And
Hmm.
too heavy.
Yeah, they are. Well, not now. Now they're short and
Yeah.
super light and like over $1,000.
I was
Uh,
just looking the other day in an ad I got like 2 grand for some of these.
yeah, man.
Yeah, I worked at an archery shop in Michigan for years.
I know
Uh,
Jays. Jays.
yeah,
I knew about Jays when I was 12 years old.
I was archery manager at Jay's for 17 years, and I think I worked there for 18 years. Um, so I was, the biggest, I was a trad guy all the way there, but I was the biggest crossbow and compound salesman in the state
Mhm.
of Michigan, which, I enjoyed my traditional customers, but um, the compound or the crossbow stuff really kind of soured it for me just because it changed the clientele
Yeah.
and it put more people in the woods, we were so swamped with it that when my regular customers would come in that wanted me to wait on them, I was so busy with the other stuff I couldn't get to them half the time.
Right.
You know.
Now, is Jay's still in business or are they out of business?
Yeah, yeah, they're still in business. They're great, great fam. It's all family owned. They were great to work for. Um, and I had mixed feelings about leaving there. I was there a long time, but the hunting in Michigan just was gotten so bad for years, and it was just getting worse every year. And I was like, you know what? I'm not getting any younger, and I had been hunting out of state, quite a bit, and I was just that's what I actually helped an outfitter in Missouri for a while, and that really opened my eyes. You know what? I said, I can go wherever I want. Why do I want to stay here for? Um, Luckily, my wife made that happen for me.
That's cool.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
She
cool.
got in. She was a nurse when we got married, and she went back to school to get her doctorate. And so as soon as she was done with schooling, she's, where do you want to live? And I said, Zone 6. And she said, where's Zone 6? And I said, that's Southeast Iowa.
Yeah, you're in a good spot. Now, do
Yeah.
you think living in Iowa, I have conversations with guys all the time because I'm ate up with whitetails, and Iowa comes up quite a bit. And a lot of guys are saying, yeah, Iowa in its prime was before the Outdoor Channel. That's when you could really, and a resident could really enjoy it.
Yeah. Coming from Michigan, which was incredibly, I mean, if you killed a 100-inch deer in Michigan, you did something. You know what I mean?
Right.
So coming from that to here, I think it's incredible. I still talk to a lot of the locals. I think a lot of them were a little spoiled maybe, but they're a lot of them, if they don't kill a 150-inch deer their first time out, the
Yeah,
hunt
they're.
sucks.
Oh
You
wow.
know, yeah, they had it so good for so long. I think I've been here since 2018. Um, I'd be ashamed to admit how many big bucks I've screwed up on. You know, so they're here. It doesn't make a 180-inch deer any easier to kill,
Mm-mm.
but they are here, and there's a lot of them. So you can hunt them if you know what you're doing.
Right.
In Michigan, I felt like I was hunting for something that wasn't there. And
That
when I
makes
guided
that
in
makes perfect
Missouri,
sense. Yeah.
we saw big deer in Missouri all the time. That was Northwest Missouri. I guided for him for 6 years. It was an outfitter, really just so I could hunt. I'd take all my vacation time and I'd go down there and stay. When I was single, I'd stay for 6 weeks at a time.
Oh man.
But after I got married, that came to
Yeah.
a halt.
Yeah. So I was having this conversation with my wife because I'm retiring next August, and she goes, "So
Yeah.
what are you going to do when you retire?" I said, "I'm leaving you," and she goes, "What do you mean you're leaving me?" I said, "Well, opening day of Bow is October 1st, and I'll be back on Thanksgiving."
You
And
know,
she
for
looked at me. She goes, "You know something? That almost sounds like you're serious." I'm like, "No, I'm
you
just
know,
kidding."
Rich, I was single for a long time, and my life and my work choices pretty much evolved around hunting.
Sure.
I mean, like I painted cars at a Ford dealership for years,
Oh, okay.
but I'd go in at 6 in the morning. I got out at 3 o'clock every day. So I could hunt every night. And and then going to work at J Sporting Goods was just kind of a natural progression. The bad thing is September and October was our busy time in archery.
Oh yeah.
And it got a little harder for me to get away. But they were real good about it. They understood the guys that worked there is because that's what they're passionate about. And they got to get their time in the woods too.
Okay.
And then now I'm kind of, I guess I call it semi-retired.
Well,
So
it's funny you mentioned you painted cars, and I'm a body guy, so that's
yeah,
I'm an
yeah, I worked at
adjuster.
a Ford dealership in Michigan. It was a big Ford dealership.
Mhm.
We had like 10 body men in the paint, and we had four painters, 10 body men, and it was just moving them through all day long. All I did was paint. I had guys that did the sanding and masking,
Yeah.
and did that for 6 years, and the breathing those chemicals just started getting to you,
Yeah.
and I had to get out of there. My buddy that worked there with me, one day he's coughs up a big old blood clot,
Ah,
and we just kind of looked at each other and we were like, you know what?
it's not worth it.
Yeah, we got to get out of here.
Yeah, it's funny
And
because I just bought a new spray gun to do I do the bow work, and I bought
yeah,
a SATA. They're not cheap.
yeah, yeah. Oh no, none of that stuff's cheap. And
No.
there it's a dealership. I mean, I painted 5, 6 cars a day. And we baked them in the booth. Rolled them right out. So it was production. Once I quit there and went to work at Jay's Sporting Goods, I still did some stuff at home,
Hmm.
but I mean, I painted one car a month maybe.
Right.
I do I got licensed as a repair facility at home, and I did a little bit of work for a while, but we got so busy at Jay's I couldn't keep up. I was up till midnight doing my cars at home. So I kind of had to make a choice.
Yeah, I
So
could
so I
see
went
that.
with the archery job.
So now with your traditional setup, you're making arrows today. What's your setup for this season?
I'm
Because I
shooting.
noticed because I've seen you shoot recurve and longbow.
Yeah, last several years I shot the Victory Trads, a carbon. I got their new one this year. It's called a bamboo trad.
Okay.
I just got those on a couple months ago and kind of played with them, and they shoot great. They're a little larger diameter. They're the standard diameter, but it's a 600 grain arrow. I shoot. It's got the 100 grain insert, 250 grain VPA broadhead,
Oh,
which
that's deadly.
I've
That's a
shot
deadly.
VPAs for years. So
Yeah, that's a
it's
deadly
a six,
combo.
yeah, 600 grain arrow. Shoot right about 48, 50 pounds. And longbow is my preferred
Okay.
weapon. I got it. I need to sell some of these bows. Probably, I got the wall covered with them in here, and they're bows. I'll never shoot it again, but I have a hard time letting it go.
Yeah, I know. Well, look behind me. That's just a smidgen of
Yeah,
what I got. I have
yeah, I got the same thing.
two other
Yeah,
bedrooms filled with bows.
yeah. I settled on the longbow. I felt like over the years they're a little bit quieter than recurve, and I get less deer, less ducking of the arrow.
Okay.
I feel like it's, especially if you get a little breeze or something going, leaves rustling.
Hmm.
I've put an arrow through a deer, didn't even know they were shot.
How long of a longbow do you shoot?
It's a 64-inch. Shoot
Okay.
a Northern Mist. Um, I've been shooting his bows for years. Actually, I sold his bows at Jay's. He was one of the lines that we carried.
That's
Um,
funny. That's funny you mentioned that because Steve's a good friend of mine, and I
yeah,
camp out
Susan.
with him once a year. He comes down here to Florida, and we go to the
Yeah,
Ocala traditional shooting camp
yeah,
for the weekend.
yeah. I think last time I saw Steve was at Compton.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, and actually we were camped right there by him. Were you up there at all?
No, it's one of those bucket list places I want to go.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I'm glad they moved it. Next year it's going to be in Indianapolis.
Okay.
I'm pretty happy about that because that traffic in Michigan, man, I'm getting too old for that.
So next year is the PBS banquets in Indy. Are you going to
Yep,
that?
yep,
Okay. Well, we will physically meet then.
yeah, yep. I'm gonna hit that one too. Yep,
Yep. I just reserved my room the other night, so my wife's pretty excited. She
cool.
that was one of our first dates 40 years ago.
Oh, really? Good
Yeah,
deal.
the weekend in Wheeling, West Virginia. uh, but yeah, that's cool. So whitetails, and more whitetails. You've taken some great bucks. Are mostly private property or a combo of public and private?
Well, most of my better deer I've shot off public.
Wow.
Um, I've killed some on private. Um, we bought some property here when we got this place, and I killed one buck here a couple of years ago. It was, I don't know, 125 maybe 8 pointer, but he was just a huge bodied deer. That was the first one I shot off of our own land.
Okay.
But through meeting the neighbors, I've got permission to hunt like 600 acres all around me. That's
Yeah, I was just going to
got
ask
great.
you that. How hard is it to gain
Well,
access?
once they get to know you,
Hmm.
you know what I mean. You just, I didn't, the day we moved in, I didn't go knocking on the neighbor's door asking to
Right.
hunt.
Right.
You wait till they get to know you. And actually, I've had a couple of them come to me, and
Okay.
say, "Hey, I got a buddy, that he's looking for somebody to help with his doe problem, and a farmer, and you know, so you kind of once people get to know you and through church and stuff, you
Yeah.
get on places. Yeah, right now actually, I turned down a couple places because I just you can only be so many places at once, and
Sure.
and the guy wanted some deer killed, for crop damage, and I was just honest with him. I said, man, I'd love to, but I said I pretty much got all I can handle right now, and I hunt a lot of public. Being semi-retired throughout the spring and the early part of the summer, I'm scouting. I'm hiking.
Hmm.
Um, I'll have 50, 60 spots ready to go, and then I'll hunt six of them all season.
Are you running trail cameras?
Yeah, yep, yep. I'm kind of changing how I'm doing that. I'm pretty convinced, man. Them big bucks, they don't like them cameras, and they get wise to it pretty quick.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you listen to Don Higgins at all? His
yeah,
podcast?
yep, I sure
Yeah.
do. Yep.
And he made a comment a while back about that. that a lot of these big bucks, they can sense that there's something going on.
Yeah. Well,
Maybe
I've been because when I'm working at Jay's, I was, the new technology when cameras first came out, I was, all in. I've ran them for a long time, and especially when they're on video mode, if you get a mature whitetail and he stops and he looks at that camera, you often don't get another picture of him.
right.
You know, and I just kept thinking, oh, it's coincidence, and but then I had a couple of videos where the buck's he's walking down a runway, and all of a sudden he locks on that camera, his video on him in the dark, turns around and runs. And there's no sound. The people say, oh, the camera makes a little sound. These were making no sound.
I was having a
But I still,
discussion
in
with.
my mind, I was like, I found it hard to believe that that's really spooking them, but I'm convinced of it now. So I never run them on video. I try and put them up about 7 or 8 feet in the air, so they're not, at a
Not
eye level
directly,
through the
right.
air.
Mhm.
And I try and not put them at a spot that I hunt. A spot that I'm wanting to kill a deer, I don't put a camera there.
Mhm.
I'll have cameras in the area to try and monitor, the movement when they're moving and stuff like that. But I'll get them up high so I don't get real good pictures anymore. Because I used to want to put them right down low where I get a good picture of the deer.
Mhm.
But I've been in a tree and I've watched even right here on my property. I had a camera that went dead. Batteries went dead, and I just hadn't gotten back there to do anything with it yet. Well, I slipped back there one morning and get in the stand, and I'm watching. They come across the creek. The does come right down the runway in front of the camera. There's probably a 4 or 5 year old buck behind him. He stops down at the creek and he just stands there looking up the hill for a while. The
Hmm.
wind was good. Everything's perfect. He sidesteps and he goes up the hill about 50 yards down, away from the camera. And then he gets right back on the runway after he's passed me and goes off with them deer. And I hadn't been in there for 3 weeks, and I'm just like, that camera wasn't even powered up. You know what I mean? And he was avoiding it, you know.
That's
And then,
weird.
and
Yeah.
then I let it run me a little bit. I'm not getting pictures, so I'm not going into that spot. You know what I mean? Which is bad. Don't trust the camera,
Right.
because I actually, one of my good farms, I didn't hunt it for a while because I wasn't getting any pictures. Well, I decided one day, well, I'm gonna go in there and hunt and pull them in cameras. When I get down, there were deer all over the place in there.
Hmm.
So they're moving through without getting their pictures taken, you know. But I enjoy the cameras. It's hard to give that up completely, because I love getting pictures of the deer, and I kind of felt like when I get pictures of a big buck, and when I see him then and I'm hunting, it's not as shocking. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
I kind of expect to see him, and that helps me control my excitement a little bit, you
Hmm.
know, because
Oh,
that gets
yeah.
the best
Here
of
he
me.
comes. Yep.
Yeah, that gets the best of me, And when you look up and you see a potential booner for the first time and you didn't even know he existed, it kind of takes your breath away and you start sucking for air and you make big mistake.
Uh-huh. Yeah, for sure. Now, you practice quality deer management on your property,
Um,
QDM or whatever
well,
they.
I mean, my wife fills the freezer with does during gun
Okay.
season, so
Okay.
that takes pressure off of my archery a little bit. So I don't want to shoot a buck unless he's big enough to mount.
Hmm.
And but I got a son now. He's 13 years old. He can shoot whatever he wants, but he hasn't shot one yet. So but our property's not really. I don't feel like our property's big enough right here for to manage like
Sure.
that. But I've got the run of the area. I don't think there's another person bow hunting within a mile of me. To be
Okay.
honest with you.
All right.
So we EHD takes out a good number of them every year. I
Oh,
haven't found them.
that's one of my questions. How
Yeah, this
EHD?
year I haven't seen it yet. This year, but the year before last, they were dying right up through November even because we didn't have a frost. So I mean, I had pictures of these great bucks, right into early October, and I'm going and hunting in these spots, and I'm not seeing anything. I'm not getting pictures. In my mind, I'm like, well, the rut will kick in and it'll get better. Well, that time, Halloween rolled around and things weren't getting better.
Hmm.
And so I decided I'm going to take a walk, and I hate going into these bedding areas at that time, but I walk in and two of the big bucks I was after, they're right there in their bed dead. So I'm like, well, no wonder I wasn't seeing anything or getting any more pictures of them. That spring, I found six, 120, 130s or better within a half a mile of my house. So I was pretty discouraged for the following year.
Sure.
and I went and scouted a bunch of some more public a little farther from the house, to get away from here. Well, it turned last fall was incredible here. I mean, so they bounced back just like that. It was, so it's kind of, it happens every year to a degree here, but Michigan, we never experienced anything like that, while I was up there.
Right.
And what's weird, I've noticed here too, when you find one that's dead, nothing eats him.
Hmm.
The scavengers won't even eat it.
Interesting.
When EHD killed deer, I'm not sure why that is, but
They must sense something, an enzyme of sorts.
yeah, my
Chemical,
neighbors.
chemical.
Yeah, I got a DNR officer that's a neighbor, and one of them I found. I wanted to get the salvage tag, keep the rack, and he even looked. He's looking at the skull. He's like, "Wow, that looks awful fresh." There was still meat and stuff, and it was late March. And I said to him, I said, "Yeah," I said, "Well, the weird thing with this one is I had a picture of this deer early December, so he made it past the first frost, but I said the carcass was untouched. Nothing ate the carcass at all. And he said, well, he's the one that told me that. He didn't know why either, but he said often the EHD deer, the animals, they don't eat them. So I don't know.
Yeah, because I did a podcast 2 weeks ago with Daryl Damron and a Missouri wildlife biologist,
Okay.
and that's all we talked about was EHD and CWD. So EHDs, well, I hunt in Maryland, and it's pretty rampant there. It's a cycle.
Yeah.
It seems to be. Now let's talk about cover versus travel corridors. What do you like to hunt? Pinch points, narrows? Uh,
Um, well, believe it or not, a lot of people's idea of Iowa is it's flat.
mm-mm.
Not where I'm hunting.
You probably got a lot
Yeah.
of hollers.
Yeah, so I'm pretty deep. There's a lot of these holes that are deep enough that I can't get a deer out of them by myself. I gotta cut them up and pack them out, or
Right.
I gotta have help. And even with another guy, some of it wouldn't be possible.
Yeah,
Um,
they're so big. I
so
mean, it's like moving a stone.
yeah, so coming from Michigan, it was kind of a learning curve here with me dealing with the thermals.
Okay.
For the flatland in Michigan, you really didn't have to worry about it. The wind direction was all you paid attention to. But here, I don't worry about the wind direction near as much as I do the thermals. And I often in the midday I'll have to get up and move, because it'll be good in the morning, but when that wind picks up, it does starts doing stupid things, and you got to get out of there.
Right.
But some of my best spots, it's what they call a thermal hub kind of. You can't go down in there until the wind quits. And you got to wait, and then I got to set up at the bottom of it so the wind's going downstream, so your sit's going downstream, and then the deer come down off the fingers, and then bucks will come down off the fingers then to hit that thermal hub because they can smell then anything that's uphill from them,
Right.
for a great distance, and that's kind of where they'll decide where they're going, and if you're uphill or you're up on any of them ridges and they smell you, they'll just stay down there till dark. Then they won't come up till after dark, but it's
Yeah.
risky because you get busted down in there. If there's any windy wind at all, it's pretty
Yeah.
hard to get away with it.
Yeah. I hunted in Illinois a while back, and it was an area similar to what you described.
Yeah,
And I hunted down in myself,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
saw a lot of activity. But if you played the wind right, you were good.
I've had my best luck with hunting the bottoms, the creek bottoms, and the ditches.
Hmm.
And when I scout a new piece, that's where I'll start there. And I'll walk up the drainages. And you just watch when you see their heavy runways cutting across. Well, that's where I'll mark those spots on my Onyx. And I'll go do the whole drainage all the way up to it comes out on top of ridge somewhere.
Right.
And then I'll scout the ridge side, the ridge top coming back, but I'll be able to look at my Onyx and I'll say, okay, that runway was down there. What are they doing up here? And you can it helps you, figure some stuff out. But for evening hunting, man, it's hard. I like to hunt them bottoms, and I'll just move up as far as I can, and I'll stay below the runway where it crosses, so I don't get above that at all. And I'll either hunt it from the ground, or I'll throw a stand up real quick.
Hmm.
On the public, I don't do any more. I know it's all either hang and hunt, or I'm just hunting from the ground.
Okay.
I don't put a stand up and leave it there anymore, just because I don't have nobody. We don't have any problem with people here, but it makes me go back to the same spot all the time if I got to stand there.
Right.
If you hunt a spot 2 or 3 times, it's done.
Yeah,
for a
well,
big.
you just answered my question. I think it's over here, like question 13 or something. And that was my question to you. Is like, if you hunt a stand like two, three times in a row, you pretty much killed it.
Yeah, for a big buck, it's done. Especially prior to Halloween. You know, after Halloween and when the rut kicks in, our gun season's not till December, so you got the whole month of November of rut activity. You can see bucks that have come from 2 miles away, and they haven't been in that drainage since last year. You know what I
Right.
mean? So they don't know that you've been hunting that spot or somebody else has been hunting that spot. So you get away with a lot then. But the month of early, in October, I try and hunt a spot first time. I'll hunt a spot every time I go out. It'll be a different spot. And I try and plan for that ahead of time. And I used to let the wind keep me from going in. Oh, the wind's bad. I'm not going to go to that spot. No, go anyway.
Yeah.
And once I get there, then I'll make the call. I'll throw my wind detector in the air. Okay, and if it means hiding on the ground, then that's what I do. And I've done that. I'm going to stand 4 feet off the ground. So I'm staying down. So I'm still down in the pucker brush. So I'm hid.
Right.
Whatever it takes. The spot's more important to me than the setup.
Okay.
If I can't get in a tree, that's fine. I'll hunt from the ground. And you just got to hide yourself. And I got those ghillie suits, the kill suits, and I'm telling you, the deer. I feel like I'm cheating sometimes with the ghillie suit on.
Okay.
They'll if the wind's right, you'll have them 4 or 5 yards from you. And you might move a little or something, and they'll have them. They'll look right your way, and if you don't move, they
You're
look
just,
away. They look right through you. They don't even see you.
it's just another bush.
Yep. Yep.
So, what are your thoughts on human intrusion versus buck sanctuaries? Because I know, home bucks will have a zone, their home zone, if you will. And
Yep.
I'm of the opinion, just basically stay out until it's
Exactly.
time to hunt. Hang your cameras within or outside of them.
Yeah, I've got a couple spots where I put the camera in the spring, and it's wireless, and I haven't been back there. So I've gotten, and it's a creek crossing, but they're bedding. The buck beds are just 80 yards, down the drainage. It's kind of a flat, looks like a floodplain kind of, and it's just tall greenbrier and all that kind of brush.
Hmm.
I found big sheds there 2 years in a row, but so I haven't set foot in there because I don't, I think you're gonna ruin it. Well, it's public land. I got a picture of a guy the other day walking up that creek. So it is what it is. I mean, he walked up there in the morning and then he walked back by early afternoon. I had 6 bucks on film after that, but where he walked, he was in the rocks. So he probably didn't leave a lot of scent. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think you got to stay out at least for the early season, for first couple weeks of October, you can't get away with that stuff. Once the rut kicks in, you get away with a lot more.
Oh yeah, for sure. Now, you mentioned shed hunting. Obviously, you do that. I see behind you. You've got
Yeah,
quite
I
a.
do a lot of it. Yeah.
Now,
Here in Michigan, I didn't, I would go out and look and I hardly ever would find sheds, very rarely. So in my mind, I was like, oh, the critters must be eating them up that quick. You just don't find them. Well, after coming down here, I find sheds that are 2 and 3 years old. So the critters aren't eating them up that fast. I just
right,
think in Michigan, they weren't there. They
right.
weren't there to be found, because they have such a heavy gun season. It's bad, you know.
When do you start looking for them?
I don't like to go in until February, only because if they're bedding in that area, I don't want to push them out of there,
Hmm.
and then have them go shed the horn someplace else where I won't know where to find them. And on that note, um, these right here, I I had a camera that I left out after
Wow.
season closed, and I went in there. It's like I think it was Valentine's Day. Even I went in there and I was going to pull the camera. Well, as I'm standing there, I pull the car. I'm looking through the camera real quick, and I got a picture of this buck, and he still had his horns, and it was public land, and I just knew where he was at. And there were some does with him in the picture. I'm like, he's bedding right up there on that. There was a cedar ridge there, kind of like the bushy cedars.
Yeah.
Right immediately, I just turned around, walked the other way, and I got out of there. And I thought, I'll come back and I'll scour that bedding area if I don't push him out of here now, was my thought, So I did. I left. I came back March 15th. Exactly 4 weeks later, I had a couple dogs that were good at finding the sheds, and we weren't in there 10 minutes, and there was a little bit of skiff of snow, and I looked down, and my male dog, I could see him. He's nosing something around on the ground. He's about 50 yards away, and then I knew it was a horn, but I couldn't really tell what it was. This deer. Got my binoculars and I looked through the brush at him, and right away I pegged it. I said, "Oh my God, that's the one I got a picture of." And so I walked over there, and he had a hard time picking it up, And we picked that one up. I spent an hour looking for the other antler, and I hung a little marker in that spot right where that one was. We started walking all the runways, every direction. Then started doing circles, and I was just about to give up. And 125 yards away, found the other antler where the deer jumped over a fence.
Okay.
And it was laying right there where he jumped over the fence. And
so that's a pig.
Yeah, I've found 7 or 8 pairs of sheds in one day here on public ground. Actually, I've got this one here. I had pictures of this deer on a camera in August.
My God, and, look at that brow tine.
Look at that brow tine. Isn't that something? So I went in there looking for those sheds then that spring, and I found him right away. He had jumped over a fence for going from public onto private, and the private land that he went onto, I had permission to go on. It was actually one of my wife's patients, and he's the one that turned me on to the public land there. He said, "Man, you should come over by our place. There's a ton of deer over there." So that's kind of how I learned that area. But once I got back home, I had sheds that I had found on that same public land, like half a mile away the year before. I'm looking at my sheds at home and I'm laying them out. I've got sheds from that deer for 3 years in a row.
That's great.
Yeah, that's something. And I don't know whatever happened to him. I hunted him that next year and never got a picture of him, and I never saw him again.
Now that first set you showed me, the big set, did you ever physically see that deer?
No, I never did see this one physically. I'm almost ashamed to tell you this, but I never went back and hunted it.
Man,
it was public ground. I had a spot in there. I was planning to hunt it, and I left it alone. I waited. I walked in there. It was right about Halloween one day. I snuck in there in the afternoon. The tiny little pinch point I was going to set up on next to the creek. I get there, and there's a ladder stand in the tree that wasn't there the year before. And I was just like, oh, my head dropped, and I'm like, well, somebody else is, I'm like, he's beat me. He's already got the spot, which I know I could still hunt it if I wanted, but I felt like somebody's, it's a good spot, and he was set up good. He had it set up right, and I'm just going to back out of here and let him have it. And I kind of figured he probably already ruined the spot anyway. He probably already hunted it several times, and so I just backed out of there and left. And I haven't actually been back to that piece of public since, which I should go back, because when I did hunt it, I saw several there, but the property we bought where our house is now, that's about 35, 40 miles away. So I got other stuff that's closer. I got lots of places I want to go hunt. And once the hunting starts, man, I'm seeing them here. I'm seeing them here. I never get around to hunting some of these places I've scouted.
That might be a good problem to have, because some people don't have that.
I got a few buddies coming down this fall from Michigan.
Okay.
And a friend from Ohio coming. I'm gonna help them out. They drew tags for this area.
Okay.
So I'll be helping them. They're gonna stay here at the house. And
so non-resident
my waypoints with them.
Okay. So non-resident tags, points, obviously it's all, you got to put in for it. How long does it average take for a non-resident?
For my area here, it takes 4 to 5 years to get the tag.
Okay.
So it used to be 3, but now it's gotten a little tougher.
Yeah.
I tell you, they do it right here though. It's a limited number. They don't give out any more, So, I actually picked this area for a reason. I owe it to Gene Wenzel. Actually, I looked at his house when it was for sale, when we were looking to buy a house. This area here, I can hunt Illinois 30 miles away, and I can hunt Missouri 30 miles away. Wow. But I live in the draw state, so, that kind of makes it nice. But Missouri, which I'm going down there next week to hunt, theirs opens up the 15th.
Okay.
Once the Halloween gets here, don't even bother. It's crawling with out-of-state hunters so bad
Yeah.
that I feel bad for the Missouri residents. I mean, if I was a Missouri resident and I was relying on hunting public, I'd be furious. You know, when the rut rolls around and you want to get in the woods, there's 15 vehicles at every parking spot. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So September is actually, I think, the best time to go.
Hmm.
The acorns are dropping. The deer don't have their heavy coats on yet in September. So even though it's warm, the big bucks they're moving.
Right.
But
And
after,
the velvet's gone though.
yeah, most of it's gone right now. I'm getting pictures of both right now. Um, but yeah, once mid to late October rolls around, they got their heavy coats on then,
Hmm.
you know, and then if you get hot weather in November, they don't want to move anyway till dark.
No. Yeah, I hunt in Maryland and I hunt in upstate New York,
Okay.
and I'm here in Florida, and there's nothing worth hunting here, um, just from my observations. Now, Maryland's bow season opened up last Friday, and all I'm getting is photos of dudes with velvet horned deer. Oh, and that's the fun part because they opened up the season like 2 weeks early.
Do they? Yep.
Yeah, so it's great to see guys taking velvet bucks and
Yeah. I
you know,
see guys in Kentucky are getting some good ones right now.
yeah.
Some good
Ken-
velvet deer.
Kentucky, Tennessee's a nice state, it's a sleeper state. That whole belt, I call it the
Yeah.
Bible Belt.
Yep. Yeah.
But so
I mean,
what are your thoughts on scent control?
well, I used to go the whole 9 yards, you know what I mean? Wore the fancy suits and the sprays and all that crap. Excuse me, not anymore. If deer's downwind of you, if the air from around your body and your breath goes to that deer, he's gonna smell you. Period. There's no covering it up. There's no hiding it. The more pressured deer are, the bigger reaction you get. You know, here I've got your family deer and stuff will be coming through. You know, does and small bucks. I'm like, oh, they're gonna go downwind to me. Well, they'll stop, and they'll smell you, but they don't freak out. And sometimes they'll even keep going. They'll continue on their way. But a big deer is a big deer. I don't care where you're at. A big buck here, bumps into your scent stream. He'll just stop in his tracks, turn around, and walk back out. I tried all the fancy products, all that crap over the years. At Jay's, when I worked there, I had reps for giving me stuff all the time.
Right.
There's no hiding your scent from a mature whitetail. Period. So you got to hunt them. You got to hunt the thermals or the wind. Your stand approach is number one. Most guys ruin their spot before they climb the tree.
Because they come in the wrong way.
Yeah, if you cross in the runway or the area where the deer are coming from, you're done. For a big deer, family deer, you get away with a lot. But if your scent blows into the bedding area where you think they're going to be coming out of, forget it. Your big one's not going to come out then. You got to get in there without your scent alerting the deer wherever they're bedded or wherever they're at. And then some spots I have to cross the runway to get to the tree. Sometimes you just can't avoid it. Well, you make sure you cross that runway where you can shoot. I'll look at, okay, I'm going to get in that tree right there. So I'll cross where I know, okay, if he stops and smells where I walked here, I'm going to be full draw on him at that point. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't walk. Some guys will go down a ways, and I'll cross way down here. Well, if you get a deer coming from that way, you're not even going to get an opportunity then.
Right.
And then when I hunted Michigan, and very seldom did you have an opportunity at a big deer, but when you did, if you didn't get him, well, that was it. That was your season. Here, I'm not going to see that big deer again in that spot, but he's here and I'll get somewhere else. Even on public here, I'll get pictures of the same buck a half mile apart on public ground.
Wow.
I'm just like, wow, to the point where I didn't believe it at first, and I'm pulling out my pictures and I'm looking and, then you start piecing stuff together. Okay, what's he doing between here and there? And,
looking for love.
There's a big one right now on some public that I'm hunting that I'm guessing he's mid 160s as an 8-pointer.
Damn.
And he had no junk last year, just a clean 8-pointer with big heavy tines. And I had pictures of him after season closed, so he made it. So I'm kind of excited about that this year because I got a pretty good feeling on where to hunt him. because I did a lot of extensive scouting this spring after seeing that last year.
Hmm. So with that in mind, I did the same thing. I mean, I was this scent lock freak for the longest time, and then I said, "This is crazy. If I could smell my own, you know, tooting, it's useless. It's not working."
And, I do a lot of things different now too. I don't hunt from a tree near as much as I used to. Um, the thought of hunting them from the ground was just foreign to me for years.
Mhm.
And it got to the point where I'm like,
It's kind of
I'd
fun.
be 25 feet up a tree, and if the deer's out there, I'm watching one go through that I would have liked to shot, but he looks so small that I had zero confidence in hitting him. And then I'm like, oh, he's too far anyway. Well, after I got down, I paced it off. I'm like, God, he was only 18 yards away,
Hmm.
but I was so high in the tree that it's just I'm not that good. you
Yeah,
know.
I
So
used to be that 20-footer guy, and then
so
as I got older, I dropped it down to about 15.
yeah, I
And
mean the last two deer I've killed, I was 10 feet up a tree, and they were only 10 yards away.
okay,
You know, it's the shooting's easier. So on that note, that last half hour of daylight, when the wind quits, your scent just drops straight down.
like a hammer.
So yeah, if you're in a tree, your scent's doing this when it goes down. You know what I mean? So it's filling a little bigger area. If you're on the ground hiding in brush, all your scent's right there. You know what I mean? Sure, you're leaving more scent in that little bitty concentrated spot, but I tell you what, I've had some great encounters on the ground, and I've killed some deer from the ground. Um, it's a little harder to control my excitement. When you've got a 220-pound buck at 12 yards, and you're trying to keep your shit together,
Yeah.
and pull it off. But I'll be honest, man, I've had some great opportunities that I've just totally blown because I got too excited. But
Have you ever hunted out of a pop up?
yeah, I have, but I didn't like it because I couldn't see around me.
Okay.
I didn't like not being able to see around, and I didn't like the bow tip. I ended up buying a tall one, that I could shoot my bow out of, but I just didn't like sitting in there. And then it's something else I got to carry. There's something else I got to, I'm hunting a lot of spots where I'm walking a long ways.
All right.
So I just like, I got a couple different little seats that I use that, are real lightweight. And then I got my ghillie suits. And, I mean, or I use, I got this beast hang on tree stand.
Okay.
It's the stand weighs 6 pounds. Um,
Wow.
so I take that with three of the sticks, and I can get, 10, 12 feet up a tree with that pretty easy. So I use that quite a bit also.
Yeah, I was using, well, I still use it on and off my Lone Wolf.
Yep.
They make some great stuff.
Yeah,
Uh,
actually, that was all I ever used before, and I've still got a dozen of them.
yeah.
I hang them on my property here in some
Mhm.
spots, so I just leave them up.
Yeah, that's a good product. I mean, well, Cody Diakisto and his dad,
Yep.
they really reinvented the stand itself. And
Yep.
now Cody's like, dude, you don't need to hunt more than 10 feet off the ground. If you've got good cover around you,
Yep.
tree limbs and whatnot, you can hide right in the crotch,
Yep. Actually, yeah,
and
a couple of years ago, I listened to some stuff he said, and it really struck home with me. When you're out in the woods or even just look, even in your yard, you look over at the timber. I'm like, well, if I get to that spot right there, the horizon, the backdrop still covers my silhouette. You
yeah,
know, but if I get way up there, now I'm silhouetted against the sky. You
exactly.
know, yep. So I think many times you're better off staying low, and it's especially with a stick bow, it's easier to shoot.
Yeah,
It's easier to double lung them. I'd rather be 18, 20 yards off the runway, and only be 10 feet in a tree, tucked in some cover, than be right over the top of the runway trying to shoot
sure.
straight down at them.
Yeah, so my stand in upstate New York is actually the crow's nest from a tugboat. So I'm only about 12 feet off the ground,
Yep.
and the railing is there, and I have a golf umbrella to keep me dry. Jack Daniels golf umbrella so you're in the clubhouse when you get in there. And what's great is the deer walk around me, and I just lean over the railing and come to full draw, and because the railing's right at my waist, so I just bring the bow over and come in. It's fun.
Yep.
I like weird tree stands. I like stands that are unconventional.
Yeah. Yeah. I bought a saddle, when that was all the rage, and
Yeah.
um, I couldn't sit still in it. Was my biggest problem. I found myself up there kind of constantly, swinging around a little bit, and I just was moving too much. I couldn't sit still.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah,
I
I'm too
still
old.
have it, but
I'm too old for that.
yeah, yeah.
So,
I mean, the stand is definitely more comfortable. So,
oh yeah.
yeah,
So I'm of the mindset to kill a big buck, the wind should mostly be wrong for you and
yep,
mostly right for the buck. What
yep.
are your
You got to
thoughts?
kill him. You got to kill him. Going into if I got a great spot that I'm excited about, you're
Mhm.
saving it for when you feel like the time is right. So when I go in to hunt it, that spot's done, whether I see the deer or not. It's pretty much. If I kill that deer, it's gonna be because I shot him probably 3 or 4 yards before he winded me.
Right.
If the wind's not in his favor at all, he ain't coming through there.
He's not going to, yeah, you won't even see him.
Yeah, and I spent a lot of time hunting these spots that were, man, the runway was trenched right out, and there's scrapes and big rubs up and down the runway, and you
Mhm.
sit there till you're blue in the face, and all you see is does and little bucks, and well, he's doing that at night. You know what I mean? You got to get off of that hot sign. Your big buck, he's keeping track of what's going on right there, but
Mhm.
he's not doing it by walking down that runway in the daylight. You know, and if it's like a ridge top and it's littered with scrapes, just over the leeward side, you drop down there, and sometimes there won't even be a runway, but then I'll see a few big rubs, down at the same elevation going down that ridge. And I'm like, well, okay, he's traveling along here, but there's not, and really, it literally is sometimes not a runway at all. But
Mhm.
you can see his tracks in the leaves sometimes. And those are the spots, if it's evening, try and set up just below that, and if it's morning, you're going to have some sunlight, trying to set up just above it. But yeah, I'm sitting right on top. And then when it gets calm, I had your scent pools then on that flat area on the top of the ridge.
Mhm.
So at prime time when they're moving, they're no matter which direction they're coming from, they're bouncing off my scent at 50 yards.
Right.
And I'm like, what's going on here? And so you're better off on the side hill, off of that heavy action because that's what he's doing, and he's trying to scent what's going on up there. When that scent's floating down the hill.
Right. People forget
So
about, well, the younger folk, I think it took me, God, probably took me about 15 years to figure out the wind. You know what I mean? Because I
yeah,
started hunting as at the age of 14, and I was just sitting my ass in the woods. I'm like, how come I'm not seeing deer? And then
yeah,
all of a
yeah. I
sudden,
did the same thing. For years, I didn't even pay attention to which way the wind was blowing. I didn't know. I mean, I got lucky just enough to keep me interested.
right. And then I started reading and then reading more and absorbing more. Then I
Yeah,
went to work for uh, a famous archer. He's in the Hall of Fame, Len Cardinal. Um, and I worked for him and I learned so much from him, just working side by side with him. And that's what all we talked about. And he says, well, Rich, this is your problem. You're not paying attention. You're not seeing the woods for the trees. And that always stuck in my head. Little details.
yeah. And they're not going into a spot. The wind's not right, or I want to. The wind's got to be right to get there
Right.
without ruining your spot. But I mean, I want to hunt whenever I can. So it's hard. So I'll go. That's when I start doing more stuff on the ground. I'd grab my
Mhm.
bow and I'd just take off and I go to a new piece that I haven't even been on yet. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go in here and scout, and do a little still hunting. And half the time you find spots then like, okay, I got to come back. I got to learn more about this or hunt this.
Right.
But because I want to be in the woods, I want to be out there. I don't want to be sitting at home pouting because the wind's wrong.
Oh, sure. So, what are your thoughts on buck to doe ratios? You like a 1 to 2, 1 to 3?
Here I actually see more bucks than does.
Okay.
Um, so I think it's pretty equal here, like it's like it should be.
Yeah.
During the rut, I'll see even fewer does, and I think it's because they're scared to death.
Yeah, I
You
would
know,
be too.
yeah, they're scared and they're hiding. Which actually, my property, where my house is, these fingers that come up on both sides of my house, they end at a huge cow pasture. There's no woods for a half a mile across it, so there's
Okay.
not a lot of reason for deer to go this way. Beyond there.
Right.
It never fails during the rut. I'll have does hiding up in these little pockets right close to the house, you
Yeah.
know, trying to hide from them bucks.
Yeah.
Um, and used to the peak of the rut was my favorite time to hunt, but now I like
No.
post rut.
Oh, oh,
After
really?
yeah, after the peak of the rut, big bucks that haven't been. That's when because I leave my cameras out all year to kind of see what's going on. I start getting pictures of bucks I've never seen before. You know, traveling right through till the gun season, and actually even after the gun season, after the majority of the does are bred, I think those bigger bucks they'll start traveling more to look for the does that haven't been bred.
And I will agree with you on that because I have noticed because I've since I moved to Florida and I've 4 years now, I've traveled up north and I've hunted Halloween week. I've hunted the first week in November. Typically, historically, with the dead bucks I'm looking at here, most of them were killed on November 7th, and they were responsive to rattling, mock scrapes, snort wheezes. That's what
Yeah,
killed them.
yeah. That first 2 weeks in November. Don't get me wrong, I'll be out there. I mean, that's things are happening. But from the 15th of November to December 1st, I think that's my favorite time to hunt.
And
And
that's when,
literally, there's nobody hunting then.
right.
People are busy. They got
What the
holiday stuff kicking
right,
in.
the rutcation is over, so they're back to
Yeah,
work.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So this
And
year I'm
living there,
going.
a lot of
Well,
people are like, "Oh man, you must have it great living there." Well, I mean, I still have a family, so
yeah,
I don't get to hunt all the time.
right,
But I do. My wife's great. I will. I mean, I probably hunted 100 days last year.
man.
So so I can't complain. But there's a lot of days. She'll even say, "Oh, you can go," and I'm no, I don't hunt much on the weekend. I want to do stuff with the family.
Right.
I try and hunt mostly during the week when I can. But once the rut gets in, I mean, I try and get out there
Uh,
any chance I can.
I hunted 14 days last year. 14.
Yeah, yeah. I hunt a
But
lot.
I'm traveling more as I'm getting older, like Mexico and other places,
Cool.
just because I want to see things. I want to experience other things.
Yep.
Uh, it's just one of those things. Now, what is the average age of a mature doe in your area?
Um, I mean, I'd say probably 3.5, 4.5 years old.
Okay.
Is the average. Once in a while, you'll see, the real old, donkey face doe. It's been around a long time. But the gun season here, it's a shotgun hunt. It's only 5 days, the first hunt, and they're not really posters and sitters. It's groups of guys. The locals. There'll be
Push.
15, 20 guys, and they go from farm to farm to farm. And they push everything, and they're just trying to kill something. They'll kill 30, 40 deer in one group.
Hmm.
And they'll literally have a cleanup crew. That they'll kill the deer, they'll they'll GPS it, and they send it to their cleanup crew, and they'll go to the next farm. They just keep going. So, and then they'll have a couple guys that drive. They're just driving in with quads, getting these deer, and then they all meet up back at a pole barn that night. And they shoot the bull, have a beer,
And
cut
good.
them up,
Yep.
do the field processing or whatever. But it's the local. It's kind of a tradition here. It's what they do.
Sounds
It's
like
really
fun.
turned me off. I'm like,
Oh,
oh man, they're gonna kill the big bucks doing that. Well, some of my neighbors, that's how they hunt, and I've gotten to know them. They don't kill many big bucks, you know. And then once in a while they'll get one. But he even says, no, he says, them big bucks he says they're onto us, and the hills, it's so hilly here, the deer, he didn't have to do much, to me, ridges and hills, that's cover, whether it's
yeah.
open woods or not,
Yeah, it's
that
sitting up
deer.
there watching you guys down there moving through the woods.
Yep. Yeah. And once he crests that hill, he's safe. He's gone. And they don't
Uh,
get many. He thinks a lot of the big ones they move out before they even start to drive. He said
yeah.
they hear him talking, they hear the vehicles. Where
So
I'm at, I can hear a car coming a mile away. Down the road. So them
yeah,
deer they tune into that.
my old homestead back home in Maryland, I had 85 acres that butt up to my back door, and I was able to hunt all of that. And you go into this bottom, and it's like just a stream bed walking through there. On either side were ridges, and I could walk in there and look up at the ridge and see the buck sitting there, bedded on top of the ridge, watching me, and he wouldn't move
Yeah.
because he knew I couldn't get to him.
Yep.
So now, then I got smarter. I stand on the outside of the place and then glass the ridges to see where he is. And then I would go around and come in on the backside,
Yep.
provided the wind was good. and kill him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it worked for him the first time, so he'll keep doing what he's doing.
That's right. That's
Yep.
right. So we talked about shed hunting, scent control. We talked about big bucks, age structure, cull bucks. Obviously, do you take any cull bucks, or are you just strictly looking for a
No,
particular
I
buck?
mean, I shot one a couple years ago that wasn't big enough to mount, but that was the year we had the EHD real bad,
Hmm.
and I wasn't seeing much of anything. And I was like, man, if I'm going to put a deer in the freezer, I better do something here. And he was probably just barely over 100 inches, but his body was huge. So I'll be honest, he threw me off a little bit. And it was point blank. He looked huge at 9 yards. But he
What's
had
the
heavy
heavy?
horns, but he had
What is
heavy
the?
horns, just no time length.
What was the
But
heaviest bodied buck you killed?
I shot one in Missouri several years ago that was 225 pounds field dressed,
Wow.
and I was hunting a creek next to a creek. Well, he ran. He didn't go. Actually, when I shot, he didn't even run. He just kind of he loped once and then started walking, and and then I could at 30 yards I couldn't see him anymore because it was thick. But when I came back with a buddy to help, that's where he was. He was right there. he just laid straight down on his belly and died right there. Well, drug him down to the creek, and then we couldn't get him up the other side. you know,
Yeah.
he was a big deer. And
Yeah.
then and he had a little Toyota pickup. Once we got him in the truck and we stood back and looked at him, you know, camera says, "Holy cow!" He said, "That's a big deer."
Yeah. Yeah. I
So, yeah,
shot one back in 2017. It was dressed out at 233, and he was old. He was ancient. Had no teeth, maybe four teeth in his head. So my buddy and I got him in my garage. He's on a tarp laying there because I'm taking him to the butcher the next morning, bright and early. So my wife, she's in her moo and I said, I need help putting this thing on the hitch hauler. I said, she goes, how high is the hitch hauler? I said, now we only got it's about 12 inches off the ground. So I just need you to I'll grab the heavy part, which is the head and the chest. You just grab the hind legs. I'll put one side in the hitch hauler, and then I'll come and help you put his rear end up on the other end. We couldn't get it off the ground. So I had to use a come along and hoist his ass up, drive the truck under, and then drop him into the hitch hauler.
yep.
So that was fun. He tasted like crap. I mean, oh my God. Smelled the meat was, yeah, he was so rutted up that the meat stunk the whole house up. So that became immediately beef jerky, which I gave to people I didn't necessarily like too much. But
I've had a couple close encounters here with two different bucks that I think were probably pushing the 250, 260 pound mark.
mhm.
They didn't even look like a deer when you first see them. You know what I mean? I'm like, is that a cow or the heck is that moving through the
Yeah,
timber there?
right.
Then you get your eyes on his rack, and I'm like, oh my god, it's and then it makes it easy to pass up them 120s, that
Oh yeah.
and smaller bucks. The worst thing that can happen to me is seeing a great big one.
Well, this
Then
happened
I
to me a
let deer,
couple of
and then
years
I let
ago.
deer go that I normally would be happy with.
Right. A couple of years ago, I was hunting with my buddy Jim, and he's on one side of the ridge, and I'm on the other side, and I'm rattling. Well, here comes this 8 pointer, a regular, nice 2.5, 3.5 year old 8 pointer. That's fine. And then out from the other side comes this monster. But his body was so big, he made his antlers look small, and he dwarfed this 8 pointer. And as soon as the 8 pointer he was only like 30 yards away. As soon as the 8 pointer saw this guy, he just turned around and took off. And then this big boy just walked around the woods, never gave me a shot, but I couldn't. My mouth was hanging down for like 20 minutes. I couldn't get over the size of this thing. It was just huge.
Yeah.
And then he wandered off. I never saw him again. But it was probably the biggest deer I'd ever seen in my life in the woods on the hoof.
We
Very
had
impressive.
when I was helping that outfitter in Missouri, one year, the day we got there, he said he had just bought a new farm,
Hmm.
and told me where it was at. He said, I haven't even scouted it or nothing to put hunters on. He says, why don't you go ahead and you go look that over? And so I hunted it for 2 weeks, first 2 weeks before gun season, so, oh my God. I missed, I had a shot at this deer and missed it. We saw it a couple times during the bow. Well, then when gun season rolled around, we had paying clients, and I didn't have to take anybody in there, but I felt like it was, I mean, that's what I'm supposed to do, right? I took this plumber from Arkansas in there, um, took him in there, put him in this tree stand, told him about this deer, and he didn't even want to sit all day. And I said, Daryl, I said, pack a lunch. You're sitting. I'm not coming back till dark. You're staying here all day. And like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he calls me on the cell phone. He couldn't even talk. Drove the truck right. I knew right then he got it. We drove right in there. 50-yard shot. With his rifle, dropped it. 200. It was 198 inches, is what it scored at.
Wow.
And it's just unbelievable when you walk up and looked at it laying there. It's just, it didn't even look real. The body on that thing was just a massive, and then just heavy mass. And I can't remember what it was. It was like 15 points or something total, but it's just a monster deer.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm just like,
That's a deer.
That's
a deer of a lifetime. That's a lifetime deer.
Yeah. Yep.
I
just hope to kill one like that. It's,
well, it happened to Gene Wenzel when he was in his 70s.
Man.
Yeah.
I'm hell on the 120s, but man, I've had some encounters with some of the really big ones, and man, it's hard to keep your shit together.
Yeah, it's a whole nother ball game there. It's apples and oranges, big time.
Yeah. When I was a kid or younger, in my 20s, shit, I was a dead eye. I never got too excited, man. I could pull any shot off, and something about passing up multiple bucks, on the 130s, and then you finally get an opportunity at the great big one. There's so much pressure you put on yourself right then that it can be overwhelming. But I'm working on it.
Yeah. Now, what time do you got to leave to pick up your son from football?
Oh, what time is it?
It's 4:45, I believe. Quarter
to
5.
15 minutes.
Okay.
15 minutes. I got to go. Yeah.
That'll work. Yep. So, so you mentioned you were semi-retired. What are you semi-retired from?
Well, I worked at a body shop for years, painting cars.
Mm-hmm.
But then I worked at J Sporting Goods for 18 years.
Mm-hmm.
When we moved down here, my intent wasn't to not go back to work. I took a job with the city. Oh, actually, I got my realtor's license right when we moved here. But when you're not from the area, it's pretty tough as a realtor because everybody that lives here knows somebody that's a realtor.
Right.
So I've managed to, a couple of our real estate deals I handled, which saved us a bunch of money. But I've kind of given up on that. And, worked for the city for a little bit, with the water department. But she makes enough money that she got frustrated then when, we had a snow day with the boy or something like that, and she can't leave work. So I'm like, it just turned into, she's like, it was kind of her idea, why don't you just, stay home, take care of the boy, and, which sounded great. But I'll be honest, it's kind of, you get a little stir crazy at times. You know what I mean? I like to do something.
Yeah.
So we've started, it's kind of a little hobby farm here. We got 25 acres or 22 point something. I raise some chickens, the meat birds, and sell them. We do 300 or 400 of them. When you pasture raise them, and they're not coming from the factory farms, people will pay for them big time.
Okay. Yeah.
And the hospital she works at, once word traveled there that, we do that, they're all say, hey, I'll take 10, I'll take 20. You know what I mean? So most of them are sold before we're done with them.
Okay.
And I kind of enjoy that. I got some around here all day with the dogs, and I get to shoot coyotes whenever I want because they're after the chickens.
Now, is there a bounty on them? Do you get any kind of money for the hides?
No, they're not. You can't get anything for them.
You shoot them and dump them.
Yeah, most of them I just shoot them and dump them. And through the summer, the hides are nasty anyway on them.
Right. I would imagine. So, food plots. You do any food plotting?
Well, right here on our property, I've got one little clover plot, but that's for the wife for gun season. That's where she sits.
She does. That's where she does culling.
Yes,
with the gun.
She don't care what it is. She wants it done the first day of gun season. She'll shoot 3 or 4 of them the first day, and that's it.
You guys process your own meat, correct?
Yeah, I'll hear her shoot. I'll hear the gun go off, and I'll go drop it on the quad, and I'll run back there, grab it, bring it up, hang it in the pole barn, and she'll stay right in the blind.
Sweet, that's awesome.
After a while, she shoots another one. And I sat with her the one year. A couple one small deer come out. And I'm I'm looking at it and I'm
Hmm.
like, she's all ready to shoot. And I'm like, oh, hon, I said, I don't think that one's really not very big. And boom. And I said, oh, it's big enough, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she don't care. Even we've had some big bucks come up and I'm like, man, there was a big buck out there last night. You should probably hold off and you might get a crack at him. No, she don't care about that. She just wants to put him in the freezer and that's what she wants to do. So fine.
Yeah. My wife would ask me all the time because I was always shooting does because I just love eating does. I like they're just great. And she goes, why do you shoot all these does? I said, well, you can't eat the horns, you know?
Well, I'll tell you, I haven't been shooting many does,
Hmm.
but I'm going to because it's good practice for shooting bucks.
Sure.
you
Absolutely.
know, you got to, that moment of truth. You need to stay sharp on that, and I think
Hmm.
there's nothing better than killing deer to stay sharp on that. It's not
Absolutely.
like shooting a target.
So I see, whitetails, you killed a bear, turkey. Do you travel out for anything other game?
Well, I mean, well, from home, I hunt Missouri and Iowa.
Hmm.
I've been out elk hunting a couple times. Haven't gotten one. We saw some for the first time we went. We had, we didn't go with a guide. We had an outfitter take us in with horses, and he
Hmm.
left us there.
Oh,
Took 12 miles in, took our camp, and left. We set up, and then he came back 10 days later and got us.
okay.
So that was fun.
That was nice
Um,
of them.
yeah, pretty tough work.
Yeah.
That was my first experience in the mountains, and the second time we went, we didn't see much of anything. That was a little disappointing. We were in Colorado. I want to do it again before I'm too old to climb that mountain because it's tough, man. If you've
Oh,
ever done
yeah,
any of that.
for sure.
The bear hunting I probably won't do again. Um, I shot bear in Canada. I actually did a bunch of baiting and guiding for guys in Michigan. When I worked at Jay's, customers that would come in that I knew, they'd draw a tag, but they lived downstate, and we lived up north where the bears were. So I had a lot of my customers turned into friends, and I would, so I'll help you out. We did some of that. And, the last time I went bear hunting in Canada, I had a beautiful bear come in, and I just chose not to shoot him. Um, and I really wasn't sure why at the moment. He was just still beautiful. I was just watching him, and I watched him walk off, and I spent the rest of my trip there walleye fishing. I just decided I didn't want to shoot another bear. I don't know.
Oh, I love good walleye. Oh my God.
They're like I felt like he was like a bear was a fellow predator, and I don't know. They were neat. And the first one I killed, I'll be honest, I didn't enjoy the meat at all. I don't know if I didn't cook it right or what, but I didn't like that, and I just felt like if I didn't want it to eat it, I'm not going to do it. And deer
Yeah.
hunting's really where I'm at. I mean, I
Yeah.
can't even turkey hunt now. I can't go in the woods and not think about deer hunting. You know,
Yeah.
if
I'm 24.
I'm looking for stand sites or I'm reading deer sign instead of looking for turkeys.
Yeah, I'm made up with the whitetail. It's just like I wake up thinking about it. I go to bed thinking about it. And it's like, okay. Yeah, I'm obsessed with it.
Yeah, me too. My wife,
I,
she's a winner. All those years I was single, you know, October 1st every year I'd break up with my girlfriend. You know, and then New Year's Eve, in Michigan was the last day of bow season. New Year's Eve I'd go out and find another girlfriend for the year.
yeah, I got you. I actually, Gene and Barry Wenzel are good friends of mine. And I remember telling them a story when they were doing their tours back in the late 70s, early 80s. They were at a college in New Jersey, and I was dating this smoking, beautiful Italian girl. She was, this is a girl that looked like J Lo, okay, and she didn't want me to go to the seminar. She was giving me a lot of gas about it. I said, you got to go. See ya. Dumped her.
Yep.
And I told Gene and Barry about that story, and they're like, to this day, they still bring it up. Did you know that Rich dumped a beautiful Italian girl to see us speak? And Barry will be like, you got to be kidding me. And
Yep.
I said, yep. So anyway, but I'm going to wind things down here, Eric. Uh, I want to thank you so much for coming on and spending a good hour with me talking about your passion, my passion. So, folks, the reason why we're recording is because, the bow season's starting for a lot of people. And both Eric and I are major whitetail fanatics, psycho, if you will, to that point. Like, what do they call that? Certifiable? Uh,
Obsessed.
yeah, obsessed. So I want to, on behalf of Droptine Traditions, I want to wish all you bow hunters out there great success this year. Stay safe. Use your safety harness, lifeline, the whole 9 yards. Don't be skimping on any of that. Safety is paramount. And play the wind. Play the wind. So Eric, and good luck this year. I will see you next year. Uh, and I appreciate you coming on, brother.
All right, buddy. We'll be in touch. Good luck.
All right, thank you. Take care.
Yep.